Hey everybody, I am your host Elad, and today I'm reporting to you from a Black Lives Matters march here in New York City. Let's go talk to some folks, see what's going on. Cool. So we're out here marching through the streets of New York City. You have a sign over here that says eradicate white supremacy. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here today?
I'm out here because I realize that the Black community has systemic barriers that prevent them from success and the pursuit of happiness. And I want everyone to know that it's much more than just an individual problem. It's rooted in the very Constitution and in the very systems and institutions that we've built.
Absolutely. So it says eradicate white supremacy. How do we do it?
Part of it is defunding the police and actually to redirect more of the budget from the police budget to other social services that are in dire need, such as education.
Sure. Are we trying to completely get rid of the NYPD or just give them less funds, because who's going to solve crime at that point, you know?
At this point, I don't know exactly what, if that means ultimately being rid of police, but definitely stripping them of the power.
I have one last question for you. There's a lot of white allies out here trying to support our people of color allies. What do you think, as a white person, we could do to help combat racism and white supremacy in this country?
Well, part of it is talking to your white friends and family who don't understand the issues that people of color and especially Black people face in this country.
We're out here in Union Square Park today. I see this sign says Black Lives Matter. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here today?
I'm out here because this movement needs support. It's not going to be done on a keyboard. It's not going to be done online. Like, you need to come out and actually support and show love, you know what I mean? Like, in whatever way you can.
Yeah. So obviously we're here on the heels of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Can you tell me a little bit more about, you're obviously a person of color, you're not white, how that affected you or what you thought of that, and the death of other Black people like Breonna Taylor at the hands of police?
Unfortunately, it's something that I grew up with, and it's all too common. It's not really the names, rest in peace Breonna Taylor and rest in peace George Floyd, but at the same time, it's something that I grew up with. My parents were always telling me to be wary of the police, telling me to be wary of just not white people in general, but just, I have to be safe. Like you said, like, I'm not a white person, so it's sad, but it needs to change.
Yeah. So we're in Union Square Park. We have many white allies around us. This is a predominantly white protest right now. Do you think there's something in particular that white people specifically could do to help the cause that maybe people of color can't?
I guess take whatever kind of initiative and like social justice energy you got here and take it into your friendships and your environments outside of this protest, because I have a lot of friends and I know a lot of people who come out and are making a lot of noise in these protests, but then don't embody those same kind of characteristics in their normal day-to-day life. So this isn't a vacuum, this lives and this breathes, and this will continue to breathe for our children and their children, and it needs to be rectified, it needs to be changed, and yeah.
One last question I had for you is that a lot of stores around us are boarded up. They're fearful of their windows being smashed. We've had some looting and rioting occur here in New York City. Do you think any of that stuff is justified? Do you think that's bad optics for the protest? What do you think about that stuff happening here?
I personally love it, in the sense that I come from a big graph community, and it's really beautiful to see like the graph community come out and take the city back and use this plywood and for good use, you know what I mean? And it's not, a lot of this anger is justified, and a lot of these businesses are insured, and I don't justify like reckless violence or anything like that, but at the same time, people are angry,
Do you think that's helping win over more people for your cause? Seeing stores get looted here in New York City, we've had some NYPD vans burned and things like that.
I mean, killing people in the street is not helping their cause.
Absolutely, yeah. And we have seen some police officers get killed as well. Black police officers. Are you like an all cops are bad crowd? Do you think some cops are good? Is it reform that you were after? What do you think about that? I think there was a dead Black police officer, I believe, in Texas.
I mean, police officers die, you know what I mean? And I don't condone the death or killing of police officers, but every action has a reaction. And the system has been brutally brutalizing people of color for a long time, and casualties happen. This is a long-fought war on both sides, and like I said, I don't condone the death of police, but they're not doing their job right.
One last question for you. In November, we have the choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. What are you thinking?
I'm still deciding where my vote's going.
Absolutely. Was there anything else you wanted to mention?
Now I want to show you my other signs.
Absolutely. Oh, sure. Let me see. So it's power to the people. What's this blue sign say?
I got you now.
This one is NYPD SMD. This is an acronym for Suck My Dick. Can you tell me a little bit about that sign, too?
It can't all be roses and happiness. You know what I mean? This is a brutal movement. You know, lives are being lost, and you know, graphic language like "suck my dick" or the other one says "fuck 12." Mm-hmm. If the word "fuck" and "dick" are the things that really are getting you most mad about this protest, you clearly are not seeing the right thing.
So your sign out here, it says defund 6 million police budget. 6 million is the 6 billion rather is the NYPD's budget. Yeah. The NYPD's budget. Can you tell me a little bit more about what your sign means and why you're out here?
Well, defunding the police doesn't mean taking away the police budget. It means reapportioning money from the budget and reapportioning it to communities, youth organizations, homelessness, social services, social causes.
Absolutely. And we're calling for this because we're out here on the heels of the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Police had his knee on this man's neck for over 8 minutes. Can you tell me a little bit more about what struck you about this particular death?
Well, it's not even just George Floyd, but that's
sure, but he helped spark it, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and having that recorded on film, and seeing that, I think that's what sparked everyone, like,
absolutely,
and seeing the other 3 police officers protect him and not do anything about it.
Absolutely, just standing there by idly. Yeah. I also wanted to follow up.
They should be prosecuted to the full extent. I mean, they should all go to jail.
Absolutely. We're hearing a lot of people chant Black Lives Matters, but the counter to that, we're hearing other people say all lives matter. I want to ask you, what comes to your mind when you hear somebody say all lives matter?
I think it discredits what we're out here for. I think it's like a really passive way to discredit what this cause is about. I think it counters the entire mission. You know, it counters the message.
We're in a very white area, predominantly white area of New York City here in Union Square Park. There are a lot of white people here.
Yeah.
What do you think white people could do to be better allies to the black community, to the communities of color?
I think be out in the streets and protest, for one, especially in a time of a pandemic. That shows that you're really with this movement. I mean, signing petitions is one thing, and that's good, but be out in the streets and show that you put your ass on the line.
Yeah. Like front line, be willing to get arrested because we've been seeing some stuff like that here.
I've been arrested for in 2003 I was arrested protesting. So for civil disobedience, I think seeing more white people out as allies for this movement is crucial.
Sure. I had one final question for you. November 2020 is coming up between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Who you got?
Well, I'm not voting for Donald Trump.
Are you going to vote for Joe Biden?
I think that's the only option.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of questionable things. I believe the other day Joe Biden was saying, like, you're not black if you don't vote Democrat or things like that.
I know. And he's been, I think his...
Tara Reid, I believe there's credible sexual assault allegations
really
against
credible, and there's no good options right now.
But you're going with Joe Biden.
The two-party system is not a good way to do it, but this is also a time of crisis, and it's like, I will vote for him probably.
Do you think Donald Trump's a white supremacist?
Yes.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Out here today in Union Square Park for this Black Lives Matters protest, you have a very interesting sign. It says, "Silence is violence." So can you tell me a little bit more about why you guys are out here today?
I think that everyone should speak. I think it's important to use your voice and, use your white privilege for something that really matters. We do have, people that listen to us, so I think that's important, basically.
Absolutely. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess it's just like institutions are hard to change, and so it's one thing to think that there's something wrong with an institution or a society, but unless you have people actively working to change it, just because you think you're on the right side, nothing, that doesn't really matter if you're not speaking out, so, yeah.
I wanted to follow up with something that you said about white people using their privilege. We're in Union Square Park. This is a very white part of the city. There are a lot of white people out here today. As non-blacks, what do you think you guys could do to use your privilege to kind of help and advance the cause, if anything?
I mean, influence other people, try and change their minds, be honest. I think honesty is really important right now. There's a lot of like trauma and healing and just like admitting that you're racist if you are. There's a lot you could do just by, not even spending any money.
Yeah, so like whites should admit they're racist if they're racist. Yeah, it's funny because they say Republicans at least admit they're racist, but some Democrats don't. So I don't know. I'll follow up and ask. Joe Biden said something along the lines of, if you're black, you vote Democrat, or if you're not, if you're black, you vote Democrat, and if you don't vote Democrat, then you're not black. I don't know if you guys heard that. Yeah. What do you think about Joe Biden saying things like that? He's obviously the Democratic nominee.
I mean, I think he's kind of like an old man. I don't know. Like, I guess.
An old white man.
Yeah, so I think I'd like to think his heart's in the right place, but he's always said stupid shit his whole life. So
are you guys going to be voting for Joe Biden?
Yeah, for sure.
Joe Biden. I want to follow up with you. What do you think you could do along the lines of using your privilege to help black communities as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like showing solidarity and also just showing like it's not exclusively an issue. Like racism affects everyone, and it's like I don't see it as, I mean, it is an issue that affects black people a lot more, obviously, but like I see it as like an issue, like an American issue, and I'm an American, and like we should all care because it, I don't know, and just like we're all complicit just because we're Americans. So I don't know. I don't think anyone's gonna like listen to me because I'm white, but so for me, it's more just like showing solidarity with like my fellow human beings, so.
I had one last question for you guys. We're out here chanting Black Lives Matters. Some other people chant All Lives Matters back at us. What do you guys, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear All Lives Matter or you see a social media post that says All Lives Matter?
Well, first thing, it's the only people that say All Lives Matter are the people who are always silent when anytime there's a instance of injustice. So it's clear, like, If there were a bunch of people who were consistently protesting for civil rights and for human rights, and they were saying all lives matter, that'd be one thing. But it's never those people. And obviously, it's Black Lives Matter too. The two is implied. And so, yeah, it's just shutting down, silencing people, and being at this point, after years of the term Black Lives Matter, it's just being willfully ignorant. Really, there's not an excuse. So.
What do you think when you hear All Lives Matter?
I think it says more about the person than it does about the actual issue.
Well, thank you two so much for your time. I really appreciate it. By the way, I like your glasses. Thank you. Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here today?
I honestly think the entire shooting situation is very much a human rights issue. It's 2020. The fact that people are getting killed in their homes, getting killed while jogging, just doing their regular everyday things is, based on the color of their skin, is honestly ridiculous. It makes me extremely angry to know that, the police use their power to kind of criminalize black neighborhoods. And that's kind of a systemic issue that's been around for a very long time, and that needs to change.
You're talking about the issue with the police. I know some chants have been saying defund the NYPD, defund the police. What do you think about that? Do you think defunding the police would be a good idea?
I do think that defunding the police and diverting a lot of funds towards, social work, towards rehabilitation centers, that type of thing is definitely necessary. I don't think the police needs to be militarized. I don't think our prison system needs to be for profit. The fact that it's privatized and that people make money based on how many people they can put in prison, I think that creates a very unfair incentive.
Absolutely. Also hearing chants of Black Lives Matters, but many of the counters of that, on the other side, people have been chanting All Lives Matter. I want to ask you, what do you think about when you hear somebody say All Lives Matter?
I think they're being really self-absorbed, and those people saying that, they probably have never had to face the injustices that black people do. And if they're saying that, then they need to kind of take a step back and then understand the situation and realize that these injustices don't affect them, and so they they should be supporting black people right now because they're the ones who need it the most.
I want to follow up and ask you, black people are looking for non-POC allies. I want to ask you, what do you think you could do as a non-person of color to be a great ally to black people and other non-POCs do to be good allies to the black community?
So I actually am a POC, I'm Asian American. And I think for me particularly, it's just really educating the people around me. My parents came from China. They're not completely aware of like why this is happening. They try to like keep out of political things like this, but I think it's important to have conversations with them and educate them and like let them know like this issue has been around since, you know, slaves were brought over and like it's unfair and things need to change, and if you don't do anything, nothing's going to change.
Do you think you have privilege as a Chinese person to do other things to help black community specifically?
I definitely do. You know, there's a whole like model minority thing where, you know, Asian Americans don't necessarily face the same discrimination.
They even out-earn all other racial groups in the United States and things like that as well.
Yeah, East Asian groups. I think South Asian or like Pacific Islander groups.
Model minorities, as you were calling them. How does that feel, all that?
It's definitely just like a different type of racism. Obviously, like I'm not going to get stopped by the police and they're not going to choke me to death. But there's still a lot of, you know, like racial injustice, like in the workplace. You know, people assume I know certain things, or I experience a lot of people on the streets just like catcalling and like Chinese. They'll be like, ni hao, which is like, okay, how do you know I'm Chinese? I could be Korean or Japanese. But obviously I do come from a place of privilege, and I think it's like in my best interest to use my privilege to help other people.
I had one last question. I promise this is the last one. Trump, this is obviously coming on the heels of coronavirus. Some people are concerned that this could be a super spreader type event for the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? And what do you think about Trump also calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus, as somebody who's from that background? And how does that play in here?
Obviously, I think his comments calling it the Chinese virus are incredibly ignorant. You know, like call it COVID-19, like call it coronavirus, just because it originated in, and I also think there's a lot of reports that it didn't necessarily originate in China. I think maybe the first case was in Italy or something.
Okay, interesting. Do you hold China responsible at all? Because I know they were saying it was from some lab in Wuhan, and the Chinese people, or the Chinese government was censoring whistleblowers in China. So do you hold China responsible at all for the coronavirus spreading?
I think there's definitely more that they could have done in terms of shutting things down quicker. I know their response was probably a lot. I think the people in China listened a lot more than the people here, and so they were kind of able to like get over it and like reopen. I think on a faster timeline than here, honestly. But I do think they could have done more in like spreading the word and not making sure that like news about the coronavirus was suppressed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So we're out here today marching in the streets of New York City for Black Lives. I see your sign says, "No one can breathe until everybody can breathe." Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here today?
Oh my. I'm a somatic movement therapist. I teach breathing exercises, and it's been really hard lately because breathing is feeling privileged. Not everybody gets to breathe. Some people's breath is taken away from them. And that shouldn't be happening.
You mentioned privilege. I wanted to follow up on that point. We do have a lot of white protesters, a lot of white marchers out here today. How do you think a lot of these white marchers can use their privilege to help advance the Black Lives Matter's cause, just in general?
Well, being out here is sure as hell a start. I don't know. Frankly, I'm sitting here, I'm educating my own butt, and I hope other people are educating theirs, and we're going to keep doing the best we can and keeping our ears and our hearts open.
Mm-hmm. It seems like we're chanting Black Lives Matters. We're hearing other people chant All Lives Matter. I wanted to ask you, what's the first thought that comes to your head when you hear All Lives Matter?
Why doesn't that include Black lives?
Do you think it excludes Black lives?
The way I've seen it used, yes.
The NYPD has come into a lot of conflict here with many of the protesters. Many of the people are chanting, defund the NYPD, defund police. What do you think about that to kind of help battle this issue?
I think that police culture it's a very traditional culture, and that has allowed a lot of abuses. When the police are beating you up, who do you call? And that's scary. If the police attack you, who is going to help you? So we need some sort of oversight. And whether that comes from defunding, whether that comes from retraining, it sure as hell needs to come from accountability.
We're also seeing, as a result of some of the protests, some looting, some rioting. Do you condemn looting and rioting and things like that that we see occurring, or do you think some of that stuff is justifiable?
Oh, that's a good one. I feel for the small business owners who are already suffering from COVID-19, who already have so much to come back from, and then their buildings, they have to replace their windows, they have to replace their stock, and that's really hard. On the other hand, I have to agree with Martin Luther King when he says that rioting and looting is trying to tell us something that we have not been hearing.
Do you think it helps advance the cause, or do you think we'll see some white backlash, so to speak?
I think we're going to see a buttload of white backlash.
Yeah. So it's not helping the cause per se, the rioting and looting?
I do not believe it is. In all honesty, I can be compassionate and sympathetic. I cannot be compassionate and sympathetic to people who are taking advantage, but I'm also not able to say, oh, you're taking advantage and you're not.
Yeah. We're seeing some chants as well of all cops are bad. Are you in the all cops are bad camp, or what do you think about that? We have seen the death of some...
You can't generalize about any group.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
In conclusion, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah. Actually, no. Thank you for letting me say these things out loud. It's hard when you're sheltering at home and you don't have people to talk to.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Obviously with all the events recently going on with George Floyd, that's the main reason. We live in a period where there's obvious systemic racism throughout our country. I think when it comes to the cops, though, the videos, I think, speak for themselves in terms of it doesn't take much of anything for violence to become just part of what happens with this. We're protesting peacefully. There's no place for that. And so I'm sick of that, even as a privileged white person. So the least I can do is come out here and say something about it.
Yeah. I know some people out here were chanting defund the NYPD. What do you think about efforts to defund these organizations? Do you think they should be reformed instead? What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think that from what I understand, funding for police goes towards things that they really don't have any business being a part of when it comes to social issues, when it comes to dealing with homelessness. If you just throw money at the police for it, typically what's going to happen is, they're trained in combat and how to deal with, when they're policemen, that's what they're dealing with. So if you're going to throw money at them to take care of social issues, and like I said, homelessness being a big one of them as well, it's just going to result in more violence. Yeah. So it doesn't make any sense.
One more question I wanted to ask you is that we have been seeing some rioting, some looting occurring around the park right now. A lot of the stores here are boarded up. Yeah. What do you think about the looting that's occurring? Do you think any of that stuff is justified, for the anger for what we're seeing in the death of George Floyd?
My only take on that is you can't talk about it without talking about what preceded it, which was police violence against an African American. And so the efforts that have gone into peaceful protesting, and I believe that is the main way to go about it, but you have to understand what's happening. And so you can't just talk about it in a silo. So when people are against the protests and the only thing they talk about is the looting, you can't just talk about that in a silo. It has to be what came before that.
Do you think it hurts the optics of the protest, though? That's obviously what gets the most media attention. We have been seeing some officers, some violence both ways. Police officers are getting attacked. We're seeing protesters. A lot of violence on both sides. Do you think it hurts the optics, though? Because, again, all these stores are kind of boarded up. They're scared of their windows being smashed. So
I get it if you're a business owner that you're going to take precautions, but at the same time, in terms of the optics, the optics are what you make of it. So if all you're talking about is the boarded up stores because of looting, again, then you're not talking about the full story. What came before that? Why are they doing that to begin with? So siloed discussions aren't going to help anything.
Yeah. Just quickly in conclusion, was there anything else you want to mention?
That's it.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Back a little bit. Sorry. Yeah. 1 second.
Sorry. Thank you. So we are out here today in Union Square Park for a Black Lives Matters protest. Your sign says all lives matters with it crossed out when Black Lives Matter. So it's no lives matter when Black lives don't matter, I guess. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here today?
Just support the systemic racism that's been going on. It's not today. It hasn't been 15 years. It's been hundreds of years. And to see week after week young men dying, seeing young black men being pulled over, seeing a community separated from everyone else, from supposedly the rights we've all been given. It's gotten to a boiling point, and this is it.
Absolutely.
Changes now or never.
I see on your sign too, it brings up the All Lives Matters quote that people say. I wanted to ask you, what comes to your head when you hear somebody say All Lives Matter?
Ignorance, arrogance. I don't know. I was born in East New York, a very, very African community. I was fortunate enough my family moved to Long Island, and I didn't forget where I grew up from. You know, my friends were black. We grew up differently, and seeing that happen as a young age, young kid, walking down the street and seeing them get pulled over, seeing them getting harassed, seeing them getting arrested, doing the same thing I'm doing.
I had another question for you. I've heard and seen some signs and chants of white silence. I've seen signs of people saying white silence is violence. As somebody who is white out here, what do you think you could do to be a great ally to other and use your privilege to help advance this cause?
Oh, first of all, vote locally. Demand change. And not presidential change. Go to community leaders. Demand it. Demand change in the police system. Not all cops are bad, we all know that, but reinforcement. We need to be involved more. There need to be changes. NYPD, LAPD, you name it.
Do you think these police departments need to be defunded? Because I know we're hearing a lot about that now.
I think that's nonsense. I think they need to be educated, and there needs to be a public opinion associated on their boards. It can't just be sergeants and police officers and union leaders. My biggest issue is how union leaders can go on the air and talk about 4 great men that killed a black man. To me, that's disgusting. It happened in Washington. It happened in Miami. No matter what they see, no matter what they say, it's blue blood to them.
I also know the NYPD has been complaining about violence towards them. I know we have seen a death of one officer, a black officer, I believe in Texas. Are you concerned at all about the violence towards the NYPD and then the violence that they're sending back?
Listen, there are many great officers, you know, and many of them are here to do the right thing. But without the proper training, seeing a woman get ripped out of a car and put in a chokehold, I don't need to see anymore. I don't need to see a man sit on someone's neck for 9 minutes and for you to tell me that's something wrong.
And even more locally, Eric Garner, and so
Eric
all that
Garner
things is happening.
for a carton of cigarettes. I mean, what are we talking about? We're not talking about someone who had a knife or a gun, and possibly Floyd, he might have had a counterfeit bill. That's why he's dead today. I mean, it's insane to me. It's insane, but we all know one thing, and I know this. If it was a white person, the chance to be substantially lower that would happen to.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing that, and this is great to see this. This is great because 15 years ago, I was just telling my girlfriend at NYU, we were here for Tenement Square in 1990, and it was mostly Asians and white kids, right? Seeing everyone come out and the peaceful marches going on and on and on. Yes, the first few weeks, few days, it was a bit of looting going on and stuff like that, but I think everyone's woken up to the fact that this is our chance. This is everyone's chance. 600 years of repression, to sit around and see another death, another excuse, another group of officers get exonerated. How many more years?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are you going to go back?
Any chance I could ask you some questions?
Yeah, about what?
About your sign. So it says we're out here in Union Square Park for a Black Lives Matters protest.
Gotcha. Yeah, never mind.
All right, thank you. All right, come on. Hey everybody, thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode. Let me know what you thought of the video down in the comments. First time here, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, stay barely informed.